You know, that there is a plan to life. Everybody thinks that everything just happens out of the blue, that nothing adds up, that nothing really makes sense. And there are three things that have happened in my life, and one of them has to do with what you were just bringing up, which I'll maybe get to. There is a plan. When I was about 7 years old, I think it was, 6 or 7 years old, maybe 8, my parents took me and took my brother to see our first two movies in our life.
And they were?
And the first movie was Jackie Cooper and Wallace Beery in Treasure Island. Mm-hmm. And the second one was Pearl Buck's, with Paul Muni and Louise Reiner, The Good Earth. And two movies which really struck very, very deeply at home in my whole deep core here. But even in those days, I did not know that I was going to be an actress. Most performers say, oh yes, I've wanted to be one since I was very, very young, or I was born wanting to be one, but I never felt that way. My first job when I came to New York in 1951, there was a nighttime show that was live that went only to Chicago because the cable didn't go all the way to California. And it was called Hollywood Screen Test. And they would take a known quality actor, and they would take an unknown quality or quantity, being an unknown person like I was, and they'd pair you up with them. Well, the first one that I worked with was Jackie Cooper. My first pre-Broadway, my first summer stock job, which was a real fluke, which I won't even go into now because it has to do with Otto Preminger and The Moon is Blue and going back to Chicago as an understudy, and I said no, and I auditioned for them, and finally they were very upset with me because I wouldn't go back, and I went in the next day to apologize to the two producers, Mr. Aldrich and Mr. Myers. Mr. Aldrich had been married to Gertrude Lawrence, and at that time, and for the rest of her life, and I don't know what he's done with his life. Anyway,
that's another show.
That's another show. But what happened was that I went in to apologize to them and say I was terribly sorry that if I'd inconvenienced them about, not taking that understudy job to go back to Chicago. I said, if I went back, I'll never come back to New York again. I know it. So they said, what are you doing in like 3 weeks? And I said, nothing at all. They said, well, this is only for 1 week rehearsal and 1 week playing, but Miss Louise Reiner from Hollywood is going to be doing a play called Biography by S.M. Berman. Would you play the ingenue in it? And I said, please, yes, I would love to. So I worked, it was the only week that she played that show. All right, we have Jackie Cooper, we have Louise Reiner that was in The Good Earth. And then my first pre-Broadway tryout of a play was with Paul Muni in 1953. And my last movie that I did, which I don't count Friday the 13th, but I count The Last Angry Man, which was with Mr. Muni. Now, there was also a book that I read when I was a very little girl, and that book was about a cat called Fortunetta that had little kittens, and it was written by Christopher Morley, and it was called I Have a Secret. I ended up doing a show called
Really?
I've Got a Secret.
Yes, yes.
I ended up doing movies with these people that
you saw
when I was just, nothing. Yes,
fate.
Yes, yeah. Well, I don't know about
something
fate.
about things coming.
Well, there's just tapestries. The life is a tapestry, and little threads are being pulled all the time. And now the third one was you.
You. I remember
right.
you. That's right. She said, I remember you.
When I was, let's see.
Who knew?
On the Cape and performing outside of Boston on the North Shore. Well, in the 60s, that's right, late 50s, early 60s, there was this young man who, I guess that's the camera, yes, who came out to interview us on the summer circuit, those of us who were playing the stars in the shows.
Could barely speak, if I can
he was
remember
15, I think, 14 or 15 years old, Brad Lemack, who had a radio show and a television show. And then I didn't meet you until 3 years ago when I was doing an AIDS benefit. Right. And there you were in the lobby of the Los Angeles Children's Hospital, standing in front of me.
I said...
Well, no, the boy next to you said, I told you she wouldn't remember you. And I said, I do remember you. I remember your eyes, but something else has changed. And then when you told me I'm Brad Lemack, I said, my heavens, indeed you have changed. You've grown up.
From this to an alta caca, that's true.
Yes.
And here we are.
Hardly, just a medium caca.
You have had a career that, for me, is very
I've been in this business
admirable.
43 years this year, would you believe it?
43?
43 years this year. I've been out earning a living in this business.
Early days of live television, films, from
Oh.
Mr. Roberts to Friday the 13th, stage,
Right.
Broadway, touring,
Yes.
and,
yes.
and really have
And
reached.
I was the woman on the Today Show.
I've Got a Secret.
And I did I've Got a Secret. But of course, when you did Goodson Todman shows, you always
You
did
did
all the
Goodson
other ones. You
Todman
did
shows.
What's My Line and To Tell the Truth and all of those too. But I did 11 years on I've Got a Secret. And then I did, let's see, what were some of the other things that I always worked? Commercials,
Yeah,
you know,
what is it about this?
interviewing people on Girl Talk.
You have this image, this very squeaky, clean.
Squeaky.
Yeah, I mean, no,
Thanks
that's
a
not an
lot.
insult or
What do you
anything. I
mean?
mean,
I'm
no,
like a
but you-
rat, a little
but you-
mouse. Squeaky
People, when you
clean.
say Betsy Palmer, people think girl next door.
Well, I'll
squeaky
tell you,
clean.
any of the girls I've
That
lived next
sort
door
of
to, I wouldn't want to be any one of them, to tell you the truth. But no, there is
You like that?
There
You
is
like that
Well,
image?
well, yeah, it's all right because it's part of me.
It's worked
but
for
it's
you.
not the whole pie. Well, I hate to say that it's worked for me. It sounds like I'm out there working a room like a politician or something. It's been something. You see, to do a show or to do a show like I've Got a Secret, where you are being primarily yourself, or to be the woman on the Today Show, where again you're being yourself. You're not hiding within a character. So people got to see me very much being Betsy Palmer. But that's only one wedge of the pie. I think the thing that upset me mostly was that I wanted people to understand that I went to the John like everybody else too. I do not urinate through my eyes with
But
tears.
you know, sometimes the audiences don't want to hear that. They don't want to know. They like
but
this little
except, no.
perfection.
No.
No?
I don't
That's
think
not-
that's
oh,
true.
okay.
Why should? Well, because then it's just a false thing. It's just a persona, just an image that somebody's
But
going with.
it's bigger than that. To me, it's really the whole attitude of show business, and how the public puts movie stars and television stars on a pedestal, and they do. That's why
like we put
tabloid stuff.
doctors on a pedestal.
Well, in some
too.
way. But I mean, that's why the tabloid stuff's. I mean, people love to read about their stars, their favorite people on television. They love to gossip about them, hear
But
about them.
we go to the John
emulate
like everybody else does. We really do. Nobody really. I think today, people are a little more aware of that. I mean, it does look glamorous, and I won't deny that there is a glamorous side of it that's very, very beautiful. And of course, living theater or live television like this is exactly where my heart is and where I feel the greatest depths that I plumb within myself. But I think people today are willing to and are more ready to accept that there is more than just one facet to an individual. And I think that our programming and our films and things like that are geared more toward the reality now than they used to be. Unfortunately, a lot of it is tasteless, but
You don't
that
watch
doesn't
much
mean
television, do you?
not an awful lot. Actually, in being in the theater, you work at night so much that there isn't too much time, and I really don't like to watch television during the daytime. So I just turn it on at night,
No
see the
soap
movies
stuff.
that I don't go. I've been on soaps. My first job was a soap when I went to New
Miss
York.
Susan.
The Miss Susan show.
Sure.
Went to Philadelphia every day to do a show live. And then, of course, I've ended up being on Knots Landing for a year and a half.
Yeah.
So those circles are all complete, just like you and I are a circle.
Like my table.
Yes.
Betsy Palmer is here, and we're alive, and pull up a chair. Wish to make a phone call? 284-8012. The number is on your screen, and we encourage you to give a ring. If somebody calls up and goes,
No,
it's a story about you in the supermarket
yeah,
that
in the
I
supermarket.
love.
Well, I did that movie, called Friday the
Friday the
13th, and just in the first one, and some flashbacks, I think, in the second one. And truly, I only did the darn thing to buy a car. I really did. My car had broken down, and I was on the turnpike for 5 hours, from 12:30 until about 5 in the morning, trying to get home. So I needed, and so at the end of the week, my agent had called and said, "How would you like to do a movie?" And I said, "Great, I haven't done a movie since the early 60s. And he said, "Well, it's not in California." He said, "It's out here in the mountains of New Jersey." I said, "Oh." And he said, "It's one of those horror films," but he said, "Of its genre," he said, "it seems to be a pretty good one." So I read it and I said, what a piece of junk, you know?
Something like that.
Something like that. And I said, nobody's ever going to see this thing. So I figured, what? 10 days work, $1,000 a day, I'll be able to buy that little Scirocco. And sure enough, I did.
And it happened.
It happened, and who would ever know? My daughter and I went to see it on Mother's Day in New Canaan, Connecticut at 7 o'clock in the evening, and there wasn't a soul in that theater, maybe about 6 kids. And of course, when there are very few people in the gathering place, nobody laughs very much or cries very much or shouts or does anything because they're all self-conscious. So nobody responded to the film at all, and we walked out of it. And I said to Melissa, she was, I think, 18, was going to be 18 at the time. I said, well, tell me for true. I said, are you sorry your mother did this picture? She said, no. She said, as a matter of fact, she said, I'm glad you did. She said, now I won't have to explain to my friends who you are anymore, because I had been away from TV for so long.
And $14 a year.
Yeah, and $14 a year.
Want to talk to some people on the phone?
I would love to talk to some people on the phone. Yeah.
284-8012, the number to Lemack and Company Live.
Somebody called us?
Up on your screen, and go to the telephones. Hello, you're with us. You have a question for Betsy Palmer?
Yeah, I wanted to tell her I love her on Knots Landing.
Thank you.
But I wanted to know if she thought that being on Nightmare hurt her career.
You mean on Friday the 13th?
Yeah, sorry.
No, the Lord works in very mysterious ways. There's at least one generation, if not 2 generations, of young boys and girls who didn't know I existed, because I had been in the theater all those years and, as I said, not too much television. And here they came upon this woman, Mrs. Voorhees, whom I play, and they love me. It's very strange.
And she wasn't a nice lady, let's face it.
Well, you know, I as an actress really figured out what that woman was about and why she was doing what she was doing.
But
and
Betsy,
the kids have said that to me.
But Betsy.
Well, I know it's...
Come on.
Well, when your little boy is drowning in a camp lake,
right,
you know,
right.
because a couple of counselors are upstairs making love, you know, in a cabin.
Well, you
have
do the same thing too, right?
I mean, you know, and my family had thrown me out, and I was pregnant without
well,
wedlock.
All right. But see, with an explanation, you go, hey, it's plausible.
This is why the kids know that it's all right for Mrs. Voorhees.
Thank you for calling.
Thank you.
Nice to hear from you.
I should have asked her if she thought it ruined my career.
284-8012. You're next on Lemack and Company Live. You have a question for Betsy Palmer?
Brad, it's Jay.
Hi, Jay.
Hi, Mrs. Voorhees. I haven't been able to sleep since the movie came out. I sleep with my parents. When you say they weren't paying attention, they were busy making love, I just jump underneath the bed.
Really?
You want to talk about it, Jay?
No, I still hear the in my sleep.
Well, it's true. I was in the supermarket one evening. I was doing a play in Philadelphia and at the Annenberg Theater, and we all had stopped at this delicatessen on our way back to the digs where we were all living. And I was pushing my little cart, and I hear behind me, and I thought, no, I'm not really hearing that. And then I heard it, which of course is the sound from the picture, and I turned around and this fellow said to me, I knew it was you. I knew it, I knew it.
So wait a minute, you wouldn't come back in The Return of Mrs. Voorhees?
No, I don't want to come back as Mrs. Voorhees.
It's enough.
Enough, basta così,
Yeah,
you know,
I
bastante. No, finito mosquito. As I said, in fact, there was a young man who wrote a script who said that he would like to see Mrs. Voorhees come back again. And I think one is enough in my life.
It did what
I
it was
really
supposed
do. I think it did what it was supposed to do.
Thank you for calling, Jay. 284.
Thank you, Jay, whomever you are.
Appreciate the call. A thing about actors and their roles, and it's interesting because today, rather sad in the news, Natalie Schaefer, who was the second guest we had on this show,
Wonderful lady,
has passed away.
Yes, yes.
And when she was here, she talked a lot about, and I know you knew her, she
Yes, I
talked
did.
about her career and the fact that she didn't really have a true television or the visibility or the fame until she did this Gilligan's Island series. And even since then, in the early 60s, the identification with that role made it nearly impossible for her to get other work that was challenging than
I
her.
had difficulty also. Actually, Wait Until Dark was written for me. Freddie Knott really wrote Susie, the character in that. But when Fred Coe, who was the producer, was told by Freddie Knott that he wanted me for the role, he said, "Oh, no, Freddie." He said, "Really?" He said, "She plays games on television." So the game situation was a kind of a double-edged sword for me. It opened wonderful doors and allowed me to do a lot of theater that I wouldn't have had the opportunity
But
to do.
closed some others as
and
well.
closed some others too. And yet maybe sometimes you really have to take the attitude and the understanding, which is what I do. And I try to live this, which is what's mine is mine, and it will come to me no matter what.